It's Jelani on Breaking It Down, your host. We got four guests today. And start off by introducing
I'm
yourself.
Jeff Hoberman.
Guys.
My name is Adrian Marsh.
Chase Santiago.
Jose Viscarando.
And today, we are going to talk about the topic of toxic masculinity. I'm really sad y'all couldn't see the first take. First take was amazing. It really was.
It's
up.
catchy.
Yeah. So yeah, the first take was amazing. Chase wasn't there. He's a new addition. But we're gonna start off with the first question. What is your definition of a man?
I think the definition of a man depends on the society that you're living in, because some of the societal norms of some of the norms of what a man is or supposed to be are determined by the society that you live in. So I think part of that answer, besides biologically, you're asking for a more general answer, right? Is that a lot of that is determined by your society and its expectations.
My definition of a man would probably be someone who carries out responsibilities, a man's responsibilities, depending on what those are, like what Hobie said, society thing. Being respectful, being a protector, things like that.
So I'm gonna answer even though I'm the host. My definition of a man, I didn't really like in my house. I didn't really have a father. I had a father figure, and he was always there for me when I needed him. I visited him. He was really nice. He was a protector. I seen what he did for. He treated me like I was one of his sons. He tried his best, even though I wasn't his child, and I feel like every man is situational. Like, because depending on if the father's not there, you could have another person who's there for you as a male figure.
At first, what I thought to be a man was the same as Hoberman, the societal norms, to be brave and the protector. But the thing is, my mom is all of those, and obviously, she's not a man. So to me, it's just the private part area. That's because anybody could pick up traits to be brave or a protector, to be strong and smart, to put food on the table. So that's it for me.
Someone who can protect and provide for their family.
So, moving on to my next question, how would you define toxic masculinity?
I would define it as someone who abuses their power. For example, a CEO or boss of a company, or someone who's higher on the ladder than you when it comes to work or a career or anything actually. Yeah.
Mine would be the same as Jose's, but specifically men that are that don't express themselves. They think, like for example, like if you have a female in the house, be like, oh, paint your nails this. Be like, oh no, that's disgusting. That's this. That's that. They're too scared to wear pink. They're too scared to wear Uggs. Just not not open about certain things that women do, like skincare and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like toxic masculinity has closed off men to their emotions and other things that they can do that would be seen as feminine, but it can really both go for both genders and not just one singular gender.
I think toxic masculinity is adding on to what Jose, Chase, you guys said. Is more or less abusive power of male traits, like just being like seeing themselves as a stronger person and then overusing it and overpowering people is just masculine toxicity, I would say.
Yeah, not much else to add, but except taking those traits that would be considered masculine and then exaggerating to the point that they become toxic, so to speak, or dangerous, abusive, use of power, sexual aggression, things like that, that harm other people and themselves.
Right. The next question. What would you define as healthy masculinity? I think healthy masculinity is a man who doesn't overuse his power, and that he has some of the good traits. Like he's protecting, he's kind, he has an open mind about things. Like like Chase said, Uggs, painting their nails, being open to express their feelings and other things like that.
So I agree, and I also want to add on. I don't believe that men who are what you would consider like toxic masculinity, they're not real men. So I would say what we talk about in the beginning with how do you describe a man. I think that would be healthy masculinity. So
It's really about being open about who you are, having a good balance between like putting your foot down and also being able to still be that protector that the people around you need.
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Chase. Just being a great protector, being one for family, uh, quote unquote, like the man of the house, being there for your family. I already said. It's kind of what I see as a healthy masculinity, not overusing your power as a man. So, yeah.
Yeah, your power, your privilege. I don't have much to add on. I think Chase really kind of nailed it pretty well as far as my thoughts on that. Being open, being more open-minded, not closed off because you say, "Well, I'm a man, and I don't do this, I don't do that," or things like that.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. From how can you move from being a toxic man to a man of value? How can you move from change from being toxic to a man of value?
I think it ties back to being open. Like for example, with the nail polish thingy, it's not bad to paint your nails, even if it's clear to make sure that you're healthy. Take information from other people and try to build off of it so that way you can better yourself.
agreeing and definitely taking responsibility for your own actions and taking the time to look at yourself because for lots of people, especially men, it is hard to look at yourself and see what's wrong. I think that's where toxic masculinity comes from, or at least some of it. Not being able to assess what's wrong with you before you take it on other people.
Yeah. Being reflective of who you are. Just adding on to what you guys said, I think you really are describing it very well.
Yeah, I can't really add on to more of that, but yeah, just reflecting, seeing yourself as someone who can grow, and trying to better yourself from it. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like situations where, in a relationship with, or just talking to a woman or a girl, whatever, my wife will say, "You don't need to mansplain." Like I'll interrupt her at times, and she says, "Just listen to me." And I think being called on it, and then going, "Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry," and just stepping back. Men have to step back and listen, more than talk.
I do also have something to add to what Jose said. You said some men don't like when they reflect. It's kind of hard. I would say some men put themselves down and don't ever get out of that slump of putting themselves down, and they can't really get back up. So don't know what to do, how to do, and how to get out of that slump.
Adding on, again, I feel like on top of not being able to get themselves back up, they pull others down with them.
So I'm gonna move on to the next question. What is the difference between a boy and a man?
I think the big difference between the two is responsibilities and maturity, because realistically, a boy's responsibilities is going outside, playing in the dirt, getting experience on the real world. And a man's is just working a 9 to 5, probably has a construction job, blisters everywhere. It's something like that.
I'm actually going to change my answer from the last time we were here because Chase did bring up a good point in the beginning when he said that all the things that you consider making a man is things that your mother does, right? Your traits that your mom has.
Yep.
So last time my answer was it takes a man to raise a boy and a boy to become a man. Obviously, I see you're a young man yourself, raised by your mother, right? Exactly. So, I mean, I definitely changed my answer to it takes someone with life experience and wisdom and maturity to make a boy into a man.
I think what separates a man from a boy would probably be time and place. Just knowing, well, like the time to be mature, like how you said, Chase. It's like you can be, I wouldn't say quote unquote a boy, but you can have fun. Like you can have your childish moments. You can have fun just being a man, like while you're still being a man. You can have those boy times, and everyone has those times where you're like being childish. But knowing that time and place really separates you being from a man from a boy, and having the responsibilities, knowing your responsibilities, and knowing the time and place kind of separates that.
Yeah, very good. And I'd say, and looking around at some of our older students here, we can definitely see those that have matured into being young men, like the group I'm sitting with now. And not to pick on anybody, we can also see guys that need to have a little more maturity and responsibility. As you said, time and place. There's a time to act like a boy, and there's a time where you say, no, I am now a man and I need to grow up and act sort of more mature, more responsible, things like that. Yeah.
And I feel like that difference sometimes is situational, like, because you'll have a boy who's either lost his father, who doesn't have his father, and he has to take up the mantle of being in the house. And then the man in the house, he takes up more responsibility than he should be as a kid. But that forces them to grow up and mature faster than they should. But that necessarily is not always a bad thing.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, or two things. I remember I was taking Spanish lessons with a woman in Hartford, and she was a single mom. She had 3 kids. Were doing very well. She was teaching me Spanish, and I think she was a teacher at Hartford Pub. And she said, Mr. Holberman, Licenciado Holberman, she said, as long as you have one good parent, it's better to have one good parent than 2 bad parents. And I think you guys are living proof of that, although you may want a different situation, I don't know, but you have a one good parent who's obviously done a heck of a good job, plus the supports that you've had. And so I just wanted to throw that in there. And I forgot the other piece I was going to say.
So we kind of already talked about this, but what qualities make a man?
As you guys have said, I think taking responsibility for your actions, being reflective and looking into, I think these are human things too, looking into who you are and how you behave in relation to others, in relation to society, and like your role in the different circles that you have, your friend circle, your family circle, and being there, being present, being there, that type of thing.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What qualities make a man?
Qualities make a man. Yeah, I think we all kind of already covered it. Respectful, time and place, just having the responsibility as a man, just that stuff.
Firm handshake, standing on business.
Well, adding on to what everyone else said, being able to take responsibility for yourself, and I forgot what I was gonna say. Wow, I had something really cool I was gonna say. It was gonna be so funny, and not funny, but I forgot. Oh my god. Being strong enough to be gentle.
That's a good one.
nice.
I like that one.
Yeah.
All right, next question. How can a boy become a man? We kind of talked about it, like how I talked about it being situational. Sometimes boys are forced to become men. Some men don't become, or some boys never become men. Some boys are in their 30s, 40s. Yeah. Anybody else want to speak on that?
I remember last time saying that in order for a boy to become a man, you need a man's presence to really become a true man. But, Chase also added that his mother was the one who raised him, and he is a young man himself. So I'm not really sure what to think right now. Like, if I still believe somewhat in my statement. It's just that character. It's mainly character. Not character as in like male, female. Just character in general kind of builds you into a man, and just kind of damn. It kind of makes you into a man. That was gonna be it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Sorry, I
we'll
have
continue
class.
this next
Yep.
time. Hobie has a class, so
Let me
Yeah.
just get a
I'm just joking. Okay, all right. Let's start. First question. First question. Why do you think toxic masculinity is so deeply rooted in society?
I think it's deeply rooted because it's been a thing that's been around for hundreds, thousands of years, maybe. It's just been mostly passed down from son to son, and they pick up those traits, even if it isn't taught to them by their fathers and things that they see. Not even in the house, too, just outside as well.
Partially because our country was kind of built on it, if you think about it. When it comes to like industry and who were the pioneers of said industries, and then being taught not inherited, but like being taught to younger and being younger men being exposed to it, but not being taught the difference between positive masculinity and toxic masculinity, and people who just abuse their power. So yeah.
To add on to what you guys said, like combined, kind of started off with like this like masculine trait of the man goes to work, and they struggle at whatever, blah blah blah. They go through their stuff, and over the years it hasn't changed, even though our society changed. Everything has changed from then, and we haven't really looked at toxic masculinity and changed it. So that's why it's kind of still here. So yeah.
Not much to add on, except, I think it's rooted in our history, and it's rooted in Western Civ, and we go back to Greeks and Romans and patriarchal societies, things like that. And as you were saying, in our society, it's pretty much been based upon a man's masculine kind of image of the United States for a while, and I think that's changing.
All right, next question. In what ways is toxic masculinity shown and used in the real world?
You said Romans, right? I seen it. I mean, in this movie called 300. 300.
That's an amazing movie. I love
And then on top of that, 300 Rise Again. Those movies were amazing. I remember seeing the boy Leonidas tossed in the wilderness, I believe, to fight off a wolf or something like that. Came back strong as hell. I mean, if you die, you die. If you survive, it's like a tale that you live on to pass to your kids. It's stuff like that.
What's the question again?
I always think exhibit itself.
I said, in what ways is like shown or used in the real world?
Used in the real world, I mean, when it comes to like, I would say the best example and most common one is probably corrupt bosses, whether it's like a big job or like a huge company or like a small family-owned company. I feel like if it's any dude who like takes advantage of the fact that they are in charge, they're physically stronger, or that they have more experience and uses that against others, then that's a good example of it.
It's kind of interesting. We spend in order for our certification each year here at school, you have to take a class on sexual harassment. And I mean, what you're getting at is people in power, tending to be men, but also women, but tending to be men historically, using that power to gain favors at work, or sexual favors, or to create workplaces that have toxic environments, hostile environments where, the men are pretty, you see this with Fox News too. We just saw that where they basically cleared house of and these people create these toxic environments for women, hostile work environments. And that men feel that they have that power to do that, or been given that power, and somehow are immune. I think they're shocked when they're actually caught that they're not these super guys or whatever. They're not above everybody, and and I think they use those positions and been raised that way that they're allowed to do those things, and it really strikes them weird when they get caught at it. Say that
I really don't have much to say after that. Summed it all together, guys.
You notice too, like in the army, in the military, the number of sexual assaults that happen to women in the military. You ever been aware of this?
Yeah.
It's huge. It's gigantic.
I haven't
The
heard
number of
about
sexual
this.
assaults. Yeah. Which is very.
I didn't know that.
It's also really big in
I also heard about it. It's really big in other countries when it's like the top. Like it'll be corporals and sergeants and stuff doing it, because in other countries it's not like how do I explain? So like in America, right? You have a drill sergeant, but they have limits. They're not allowed to touch you. They're not allowed to do certain things. They're not allowed to say certain things. But in other countries, they can do whatever the hell they want to you. So if they ever get caught doing something like that, it could just be, oh well, that's discipline or stuff like that. And yeah. Another example of it.
Okay, moving on. If there's toxic masculinity, where is there for women?
Toxic femininity, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. But a good example is it's like the third time I've said this. Wow. A good example of this is yeah. A good example of this is during the Me Too movement, when a lot of I forgot who came out about it first, but someone came out and said that like a big celebrity or politician, I forget, sexually assaulted them, and them coming out was kind of like a pretty big thing to do, because at the time, and even now, women usually don't come out about it because of fear that they won't be believed, or that it'll be turned about on them, or that the man will hurt them or try to like cover it up or whatever, or flip it on them and say it's their fault. So she came out, she exposed that guy, and it inspired lots of other women to come out too, which is why it's called Me Too, because that's what they said. And some women took advantage of that situation and saw that like there was a moment in our time where like if someone said something, people were too afraid to refute it, so it was like, okay, that's what happened. So you had a boss you didn't like, oh well, they assaulted me, and there's nothing, no one hears their side of the argument. You have a coworker you don't like, you have a thing, and obviously this isn't all. It was a very small group of women who did this, and unfortunately most of them didn't actually get consequences, but the few who did, pretty harsh consequences. But yeah, that's really it, I guess. That's the only thing I could think of. Anybody else?
You kind of did a pretty good job explaining that.
Thanks.
All I really have to pretty much say is like definition of that, which is kind of just overusing power. That's the toxic part of it, but at the same time, how much power did they honestly have? In that situation, they had a lot of power, but
Influence. You had a really good one on influence, Chase,
yeah,
last time.
and there's a lot of like debate saying how much power does a woman have, right? Yes, they have been able to take the opportunity to vote, other things. Other things have changed throughout the years, but have people actually recognized that and kind of acknowledged it for them to have power? Just a thought. Yeah.
Yeah, people don't get it now, but in my opinion, I think an average woman has more power than most men on the planet. Honestly, it just takes one sentence. Oh, he touched me here, he touched me there. Even 10 years ago, if it happened, and it's a really big deal. Even if it wasn't even true, even if it was consensual and she lied, that man could be locked up 10, 20, 30 years. It doesn't matter. They're very powerful now, and a really big influence on it's lots of music. There are tons of female artists that encourage this kind of behavior, and it's okay for women to be independent, but they push that narrative too. There's nothing wrong with that, but at a certain extent, they shouldn't be doing this. This isn't really acceptable to lie and cheat and try to normalize it in a way where it's not really beneficial for anybody. It's just damaging society and yourself as well.
Like an add-on is like being independent, being strong should mean working on yourself and not pulling those around you down so that you can just be bigger than them.
Well, to play devil's advocate, because I love doing that. Be honestly, to be completely honest, that is true. What you are saying is really true, but sometimes it is other way around too. A man doesn't get his way. Yeah, you're out of your job, buddy. Like stuff like that.
And it
could be like
kind of like the flip side of it, where it's like
Yeah,
you owe me this, and this being a sexual favor, and then they say no, it's alright, we're out.
yeah. And even if it's like consensual, one time, it's not. They can bring it up saying it wasn't consensual then, but either way, I think it's just like people problem. You know, people are kind of a-holes. It's not much to fix about that, but yeah.
That's why one question I don't like is like I don't like when people generalize like when women have power, when men have power, because it's different based on the individual. You know what I mean? Like, not because one woman has lots of power doesn't mean that they all do. Just because one man has power doesn't mean that they all do. Obviously, the majority is men, because that's just, I mean, that's kind of how society has set itself up. I forgot the word for it, but yeah. So I think it's boiled more down to the individual rather than a whole group, because, like you said, right? You said female artists like to push the notion that of like that negative behavior, that it's okay because it makes you stronger, right? But there are also lots of female artists that go against that, and they specifically refute those messages and say, be your own person, don't pull those around you down to make yourself feel bigger, whatever. So like, just because there's a few bad people doing it doesn't mean it's all of them, and that can go both ways, obviously.
I also have something to mention. In a comic I seen, there was these two dudes who got raped by women. They didn't want it. Well, actually, it was more than two, but yeah, they got raped by women, and they don't really talk about it. It's just like they hold it inside, cried. Yeah, like Mark Grayson. Yeah, it happened to him, and it was not okay after that. I feel like men, when they're in that situation, they don't talk about it. Like they kind of do the same thing as women. They don't talk. Well, some women don't talk about it. Like me personally, I know somebody who got raped and don't talk about it.
Yeah, there's lots of like, I feel like, obviously I can't speak for women, but like from the experiences and stories that I've heard, lots of times the reason that they don't speak out about it is because they feel no one's gonna believe them. They feel their friends will like get mad at them or whatever. They feel like their parents will say it's their fault. They feel like their community will like bash them.
Yeah.
They fear they're scared that the person who did it will lie or flip it or whatever. And from the stories I've heard from men, it's that people will say, "Oh, but you should have liked it or whatever," or "Oh, you could have fought back," or this and that. When lots of times you can't really know you never know what you do in the situation, because if the situation didn't happen to you, you know what I mean? So I think in situations like that, the best thing to do is listen and offer not condolences, what's the word? Compassion, offer compassion, but yeah.
All right, next question. Why do you think the label toxic masculinity was created?
Hold on.
There are children walking down the stairs and they're making a lot of noise. Dun, 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 dun. You're gonna cut this, right? Because this is just awkward silence. Okay. So I can say whatever I want.
I'm just gonna have you repeat that question again.
Speak louder, by the way. You're mumbling.
Okay. I'll speak louder. Why do you think the label toxic masculinity was created?
I think I'll let you get this one.
Okay. I said this last day. Did I say this last time? I think I did. Well, like anything toxic, it spreads, and masculinity, obviously masculinity. So, like we said earlier, it can be taught, it can be learned, which I guess is what makes it toxic. It can also be misinterpreted, like someone who's a good man can raise a bad man if they don't know how. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I want to add on to that, because most boys never had that father figure in their life. What it's really like to raise a boy and turn him into a man. I feel like the lack of a presence of a father figure also plays a role on raising kids, and same thing goes for women too. If a boy's or a man's raising a girl, or a woman's raising her little girl as well, it just depends on the figures that they have as they're a little kid as well.
What was the question again, Jelani?
Why was the label toxic masculinity created?
Well, I think, as we talked about before, that groups of men had gotten together to talk about the issues of masculinity, what it means to be a man, and in our society, and were questioning themselves on their own masculinity, and how I think in a sense, being trapped by this toxic masculinity, it hurts the person themselves, the male in themselves, because they're not allowed to necessarily express the full range of being a human being or being a man, because they're kind of get stuck into these stereotypical gender roles. And then the flip side, is that I think that men were becoming aware, and these are self-awareness groups, and talking to each other and becoming aware of like what they were putting out there as men, and that it wasn't healthy for them, and it wasn't healthy for the people that were being subjected to their behaviors.
So,
I think that was a great summary of.
I'm gonna speak on that. So, in my research, I found a man named Stephen Hicks. He, this was from when? Was it from? I think it was from the 1960s. There were these 10-week classes where men would sit in a class and try and unlearn toxic masculinity. Yeah, I think so.
Might be a little later, but whatever.
Yeah, it might have been a little later. I don't think the article gave me an exact date, but yeah, they took 10-week classes to unlearn toxic masculinity, and then Stephen Hicks, he goes after the 10 weeks. He said he felt better. He felt better about himself and his actions and where he was going in life after.
I have something to say about that, which I said last time, which obviously got cut out. I hate to play devil's advocate again. I do think it's a good idea to talk things out, but it might not solve the issue entirely.
That's true.
I do think like having a sit down group is great, but there's still those people who honestly think that will still stay in their ways. Like having a support group or having a sit down talk is definitely one of the first steps in improving that way. And I honestly think that there should be something like that. Not only this topic, but like a lot of more topics that kind of
Yeah,
more or less.
multiple topics.
Yeah,
Topics that is meant to be like a really long time to sit down and talk about.
yeah, and I think those will kind of lead us in the right direction. So yeah.
I agree. But I also feel like in situations like that, it's up to, because as harsh as it sounds, there are some people who would just never change. So obviously, for some people, it takes a lot more. Some people you could just be like, "Hey, this is wrong," and they're like, "Okay, you're right." Others, it takes months, maybe even years of, what's it called? I don't I don't know the word, but you know what I mean, like to convince them that there's a problem.
Oh, persuade.
That's more negative, I guess, but yeah, something like that. But yeah, so like I feel like in a situation like that where like there's a 10-week classes, I feel like you told me about it, I don't know much about the classes, but I feel like in a situation like that, there are some people like eventually they shouldn't be able to do the class because all that would do is make them worse, I would say. Because I feel like if you have someone who's in your like if you have someone who has a mindset and then you go to this class that's just telling you everything about your mindset is wrong, all that would do is antagonize them, you know what I mean? But obviously there are some people who will change for the better. But the reason they changed for the better is because they looked at themselves and they said, something's wrong, I need to fix it. So
Yeah, a big role in this is really just accountability and responsibility. Because these are grown men, they probably have kids that they need to take care of and bills that they need to cover.
All right. Next question. Do you think as a society we have contained toxic masculinity, or is it still a growing problem?
growing slower, but definitely growing. I'll only say growing slower because it's easier to kind of call it out nowadays, especially with how do I explain it? Especially with more like more consequence. You know what I mean? Because you could be information too, but more consequence. Like because you can be like a boss or whatever, and if you try something that you would have tried years ago, like hey, do me the sexual favor and you can keep your job, and if you go high enough on a board or a ladder or whatever, that sounded wrong. You go high enough like on the job ladder. I mean, you'll find someone who can take care of it eventually. But back then it was like, oh wow, that's part of the job. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I feel like it's getting a little better, but it's still growing. It's an undeniable fact.
It's growing a lot less, especially on media. You don't really see it a lot like how you would a few months ago. The narrative is definitely being pushed a lot weaker than it used to be because it was very strong. It was very strong.
I will agree that it is a growing problem because we have a lot of more sources that will show, or that will kind of persuade people to have this kind of toxic masculinity mindset. But at the same time, our generation kind of has more information. They see a lot of things, and we have the opportunity to look at that information and kind of learn from it. We have history to look back on, look at our mistakes, stuff like that. I think it's more or less it could go down because of the amount of information that we have now, but at the same time, information of toxic masculinity has kind of been released, and it could persuade people in the wrong way too. So.
Just a question for you guys. Do you see it amongst your generation now? Or do you see you
Yes.
do a lot?
In our grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what way does it manifest itself?
Depends on the person.
Literally,
Yeah.
it's like picking, like, it depends on who you hang out with. It honestly depends on like who you hang out with, people you associate yourself with. That's kind of it. Just like who you are influenced by, who you're mostly around. Kind of you pick up those kind of actions, like the saying, monkey see, monkey do. You know, it's basically what happens.
And it is hard to kind of like, especially when it comes to friends, you know what I mean? Like, for example, you could be new to a school or new to a friend group, whatever, and you click with these guys for whatever reason, and then either you realize or someone else realizes for you that these guys aren't really that good. It's kind of hard to turn away from that, you know what I mean? Especially if you're new to a place, new to a team, a school, a community, anything. So I think it all, like what Jay said earlier, responsibility and what else did you say?
Accountability.
Accountability. There you go. Big word. I don't remember it. But yeah.
My question was, how did you see it? Like you were saying about different people.
Like in the school, how do I
but
see it?
How do you see it? Like, yeah, like in other words, like.
You want an example?
language to women.
Yeah, but
or-
don't.
You want an example?
Oh.
I won't say names. But sexual assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there has to be a lesser.
No, yeah, just just how people kind of treat, like the way that I've seen guys talk to women, or like they'll mess around with them, and like just treat them not in a respectful way, almost. But at the same time, I kind of see that with almost everything they do. So I don't know if it's.
Toxic masculinity, that's just how they are.
Yeah. But how they are is, wouldn't you consider that as toxic masculinity? Not just
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
not just how you act with women, just how you act as a person, as a man. So
Yeah.
But one way I would say that could help with this is kind of like looking at your morals, looking at like what, like, it's a stretch, but like self-reflection. And I know.
I mean, that's
it's
what
not
it.
like,
That's what it all boils down to at the end of the day.
yeah,
Looking at
it's not
yourself.
like what everyone's gonna look at. Like at the end of the day, before I go to sleep, I'm gonna reflect on my life. It's most likely not gonna happen. But people should have their morals. They should have the sense. I would like to hope people will have the sense to one day, just anytime, reflect on who they want to be as a person and try to achieve that in some type of way.
Last question. How can we move past and heal from toxic gender ideas and behaviors?
Like Adrian said before, the biggest thing is really just self-reflecting, taking in other opinions on yourself from other people. Like, the biggest people or the most people around is really just your parents and your friends. Get a sense of how you act as a person and what you can do to make yourself better. And there's also a quote, word for word, I think it was, "Be the man you want your son to be." That plays a really big role in your mindset as well, because you wouldn't want your son to be doing the horrible things you're doing now. You want them to be a better version of you, better in every way possible.
I also want to say something. So I was gonna say that it's also it's self-reflection, but you also have to talk to the opposite gender too, because they're gonna be like, oh, this is set in stone what they're gonna do, so believe that, watch out for this and that.
Adding on to what Chase said, that quote, also, that could be a good way to like change the way certain men act. Kind of like treat women the way you'd want someone to treat your daughter. Treat women the way you'd want someone to treat your mother, your sister. You know, that's something that my dad, well, both my parents set in stone for me when I was very young. So, I mean, yeah, it's.
John, you pointed out, talking to the opposite sex, like how we can improve, kind of. I don't know how to put this in a nicer term, but like, how would that really help anything? Like, are they? Because honestly, there's no one group that kind of decides, oh yeah, you're not doing this right. Like, I'm not trying to say like women are they're not the way to solve our problems, but there's no one group that decides that. Now, it would be helpful for a woman's perspective, yes, and that taking that into account would be a great way to start. But it's not like you need the
Absolute approval
of a woman,
Mm.
but you kind of need the approval of everyone. Not everyone, but a good sense of a majority to know that you're doing the right thing.
Mm.
But yeah,
But it also shouldn't be hard to look at yourself.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it shouldn't be hard to be like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be talking this way, walking this way,
You'd be surprised.
treating her like this, treating my friend like this. Like, he's been with me since I started the school. I shouldn't be making fun of him for things that are out of his control. Shouldn't make fun of her because of her hair. Like, this,
Yeah.
this is stuff you know it's wrong deep down. I don't know why you still do it in the end.
All right, that concludes this episode. We're all relieved because this has been like 5 different takes.
This
Oh,
podcast
we
is
had-
sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
I said that in the beginning too. Yes, Hobie hasn't said anything because he can't think of anything now, but it's okay. But you want to say anything to people, Hobie?
No, Jelani, you know, I said a lot before, and I think I just ran out of words. And surprisingly, you know, don't be throwing this stuff around.
All right. I'd like to say Hobie said last time.
And
So Hobie did say last time that we are an excellent group of men, or aspiring men,
yes,
young men, and I just want to, because he didn't say it this time, just want to let people know that we're not
we're
a-holes.
smart, man. Yeah, we're not like these other men. Okay.
Well, let me say it myself. We've had wonderful discussions before. They got erased. And we've had great moments doing this podcast with Jelani. And like I said, it's pleasure with such thoughtful, reflective young men as yourselves. Pleasure.
Okay. Bye, guys.